Hello,
Yay!
everybody. Welcome to this week's installment of the Life Coaching Training Hangout here at coachinghangout.com. I am Sean Adams. I am the host of these here Hangouts. And we are going to start like we usually do by introducing the folks that are inside the Hangout with us before we say hello to those folks or that folk at this point, I just want to go over that today we're going to be talking about the difference between good content versus bad content. And what does that mean, especially from the realm of being a coach? There's a lot of stuff that coaches are doing that, from my perspective, is not always the most beneficial to the people that they are working with. So if we can talk about how to discern what is good content versus what is bad content, you're going to be able to deliver a better quality product as a coach, which means that your coaching clients are going to be happier, more successful, which means they're going to be referring more people to you, which is ultimately what we want. We ultimately don't want to have to market ourselves at all. We just want our former and current clients bringing us new clients because that makes our lives easier. But you only do that if you do good content. So we'll get to that in a second. Before we go there, we're going to say hello to the person who's so far in the Hangout. We're waiting on a few others. Nika, go ahead and say hello to the world.
Well, hello. I just will introduce myself. I'm Nienke van Bezooy from the Netherlands. In the field of coaching, I'm a speaker coach. I'm proud to announce the new title of my new book. It's going to be The Executive Speaker Rescue Guide. And talking about content, used to be a lot of good content in that book because it's really helpful for my coachees. And otherwise, we have a problem.
Excellent, understood, and that is I'm totally with you on that. So I'm going to go ahead and just go for a couple minutes on this topic of good content versus bad content and what that means. I know we've got a few folks that are watching from outside the Hangout. If you want to come in and be a participant in the Hangout, please come in. The link to the Hangout was already posted on the event page, so you can go ahead and click that and come in. Some of you have gotten some direct invites as well. We'd love to have more people in the conversation, but if you want to just watch and listen to the conversation, that's totally fine as well. Glad to have you, our Kiwi friend Matt from Frankfurt, Germany, and Guten Tag or Guten Nacht or whatever time it is there. I think it's Guten Nacht.
Guten Abend. Guten Abend.
Guten Abend? Okay, I was close. So welcome to Matt. And today, like I said, we're talking content, good content versus bad content. And I know that especially for people who are just starting out in the world of coaching, there's a tendency to feel like you have to have everything planned out and mapped out and know, like, I'm going to bring in folks, it's going to be a year-long coaching program, and every week this is what they're going to experience. And they go through and they spend, 6 months designing content for a year, and then because they put all that time, energy, and effort in, they're very inflexible often in the delivering of that content. And especially if it's the first time you're delivering content, it's gonna change. It has to. You have to be flexible to the needs of your folks, to how well people are understanding it and processing it, to how well people are following along, understanding. All of that stuff has to be taken account as you move along. You might feel like somebody's going to be able to get through this stuff in week 1, this stuff in week 2, this stuff in week 3. It's going to be super, it's going to be easy, and then you get into it, you start teaching it, and you realize you need 3 days just to get through what was, or you need 3 weeks just to get through what was week 1's content, and now all of this other stuff is now delayed or off because you're needing to really actually do a little bit more work in how you're training folks. You've got to be flexible. Whenever I'm doing training, coaching, anything like that, I'll do it in about 3 weeks chunks. Here's the stuff that we're going to do over 3 weeks. And I'm always building in time or possibilities for people to give feedback back to me about how's it going, what are you learning, or do you have any questions or anything that you're unsure about, those kind of things, so that I can then make week 4, 5, and 6, or those next 3-week chunks, match that. And sometimes it might mean that I just take a week to go back and say, all right, we're going to review this week, and better explain the things that might not have been clear when I first did it during the first 3 weeks. You've got to be able to willing to do that flexibility. So that's the first aspect of bad content to me, is being so rigid and so determined that what you wrote originally, even though no one's gone through it, is so perfect because you're so amazing that it can't be changed. It's going to get changed. It has to get changed. you've got to be willing and flexible to make adjustments on the fly. It doesn't mean that it has to be weekly adjustments. Like I said, I do 3-week chunks. A lot of people I know do it monthly. They do 1 month, and starting in the second week of that month, they're planning the second month, but they're doing it based on the feedback and how the program is going up to that point. That is, bad content is being rigid and stuck to a pre-format formula you created without being open to making adjustments to match. So that's my first take on bad content. Before we go into getting some feedback from Unique on that, I want to welcome our newest member of the Hangout, who actually is on time or very close to on time today. Dr. Allen, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead and unmute and say hi.
Well, hi guys. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be on time. I try to lay the law down with my Hangout before this one that you're running into my coaching Hangout, which is my most enjoyable Hangout. So I'm losing 30 minutes each week, but no, so I'm glad I'm here. And I sort of missed your opening, so hopefully I'll catch up on what the thought process is.
Yeah, no worries. We're talking good content versus bad content, and I gave my first example of bad content, which is being too rigidly stuck to a pre-formula that you created for your coaching, that you're not able to make adjustments as needed as people are going through the program, because some people might move faster, some people might move slower. You may not be clear in how you're explaining things. You've got to have that flexibility. So bad content is a lack of flexibility in how you're approaching your teaching. So I'm going to throw that open to you guys and hear what you think about that idea.
I totally agree with you, Sean. Just being rigid and just not flexible is the first sign of bad content to me. What can prevent the bad content in that way in coaching and training, to me, is have my first assessment first and see on what level my coachee is. So you can be flexible in what to deliver. If you just blurb out all your content and you don't know what the starting level is, it makes it very hard to become good content. Although all the things you can teach can be very helpful and good, but it doesn't fit. So the match is also very important in what you deliver. And that's what I wanted to add, and I'm sure Dr. Allen will add something too as well.
Okay, I was actually I was multitasking, which of course is never a good thing here. I was trying to get Dr. Randy in the Hangout, and she was asking, here she comes. So it worked. At least that part of it worked. So are we talking about the content that you're sending your coaching clients? Is that basically what we're talking about here? Or
what you're telling your coaching clients, or what you use for your coaching client, and what is the definition of good or bad content about it? And Sean said first, well, if you're really sort of rigid and not flexible about your content, and you're not willing to sort of adapt something new or have some reviews or move in a different speed as your coachee needs, it can be bad content. Is that good capture, Sean?
Yeah, the idea is that basically when I'm talking content, I'm talking about, well, we could open the discussion even greater of good content versus bad content when it comes to recruiting folks, your website, how you're promoting, all of that stuff. But what we started the conversation on is the delivery of your coaching program. As a coach, as a consultant, when you're delivering your program, however that looks, what is it that you're having the person work on, and is that benefiting them or not, is what I'm looking at from that distinction between good and bad content. And so really simply, good content to me is content that moves your person forward so they have success. Bad content is content that they're doing just because you feel like they should, because it's busy work, because it's easier on you, because it's more comfortable for you, whatever it might be, but it's actually not necessarily going to help the person succeed at whatever it is you coach them on.
And not tailor-made.
Okay, so let me add that. So now I think I'm on the same page as you guys, so I think that's always a good thing. So first of all, I think the content has to have a certain criteria, and the first thing for me is that in the initial stages of developing content for coaching clients, I'm literally building the relationship. So the goal of my content is not so much to get them to do something for me, but rather for me to build the relationship with them so that I can then, in the next step, go ahead and get them to where they need to go. So that's number one, building the relationship. Number two, My second goal of my content is literally to set expectations so they have the right expectation of where our relationship's going to go, so that we are both on the same page. So I look at it as, we start out by deciding, using questionnaires, which we spoke about previously, of are we the right fit? This is, the questions I ask. We talked about this at a previous hangout. These are what I learned from them. I take what I learned from their answers to the questions I ask, and then decide, is this person qualified or disqualified from actually being my client? And then, as I said, now we have a relationship. We have a professional relationship, which basically means we've agreed to work together and they've paid me. And as a consequence of that, now I'm developing the relationship. Now I'm setting down the ground rules in my content for that relationship, so we're both on the same page, and make sure that the expectations, as I said, that they have fits into my coaching style, and that they understand what coaching is really all about, because I think there is that transition of people that, number one, maybe have never worked with a coach. So if they've never worked with a coach, they may not understand that whole world, number one, or worse yet, they've worked with a coach and that coach may have had a different style of coaching than I do, and their expectation is, I'm going to pick up where that other coach left off, when in reality, that coaching to me may have no benefit to them whatsoever. And in fact, we might have discussed in the qualification-disqualification phase that coaching had no benefit, and that's why they're seeking a new coach. And yet they expect, well, all coaches are the same, so they're going to expect me to do and say and act the same way theirs did. So that's my preliminary concept of how I want my content to go in a new relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's true. That's important. That's a good example of good content versus bad content. Good content is actually achieving what you said you're going to achieve and being clear that it's taking them in the direction you said it was going to take them, but also that it is matching how you said it was going to happen. If you said that your coaching, you're going to be doing your coaching, it's always going to be done by Hangouts, they're going to be 45 minutes long, we're going to start with this, we're going to end with this, and the middle section is going to look like this, and none of your Hangouts ever match that model that you said when they signed up, that's bad. So you need to know, this is why you have to be clear on what it is, how you're doing it, so that your content matches it, the delivery of your content matches it. So it's not just the content, but the delivery has to match how you said the coaching is going to be, the agreements that you've made with that person about how things are going to happen, all that communication, knowing that they trust you. And you're right, the big thing there, Dr. Allen, is that a lot of people jump from coach to coach and are never happy because they might have found one part of one coach they loved and they just expect that other person knows this and is going to be that ideal person. So there's
then you get coach hopping. Coach hopping never works. Coach hopping is a sign of bad content of the other, or just a misunderstanding of expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Coach hopping is the idea, and coach hopping could be your fault in that you have bad content, or if you're experiencing coach hopping, the other aspect of that is you never made clear expectations or clearly defined how things were going to work, so it's not, they're lost or confused. If you're clear at the front and you match what you were clear about at the front, you're not going to have people leaving you to go to other coaches because they know exactly what they signed up for and you're giving them exactly what they signed up for, which helps prevent that issue. But it also means that if you know somebody who may have hopped from coach to coach to get to you, that's part of the disqualification questions of, is this really a good person, or are they going to leave in 2 months instead of stick through for the year? Or B, you need to say, I know you've had a lot of coaches before, what did you like about them, what didn't you like about them, and what do you expect from me? And then you don't have to become what they expect from you. You have to become you, and you have to let them understand where their expectations of you may not match what you deliver, and so there's this void between the two areas that people want to get to. You got to name that early on, otherwise they're going to abandon the first time this comes up in a coaching call.
Something strange happened last week to me. I closed down a former business what I used to run. It was business consultancy, business resultancy. It's how to gain the results in your business. And I left that company. I closed down all things about it. But last week I got 2 people asking for that kind of coaching. So what do? I still can do it. This content is still there, but it isn't matching my goals for what I want to do with Presentation Master. So I said, well, unless you want something in the public speaking world, I'm not going to help you. I will refer you to somebody else. So if I continue and mixing up 2 businesses, it can be bad content.
Right, because they're gonna. You ultimately, we teach what we want to teach, and even if you don't think you are, you would still be bringing in the public speaking stuff into the other style of coaching, because that's just naturally what happens. Like, I want to say hello to Dr. Randy really quick, because she did come in a little while ago. I'm gonna let her go ahead and introduce herself, and then I think she's a perfect example of how that could become a danger if you're not clear on that. Dr. Randy, go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I guess good morning for some of you that I know watch from the other side of the world. I'm Dr. Randy Ross. I show health providers and health institutions how to use relationship marketing as a way to really gain their presence and credibility in the community and grow their business beyond their wildest dreams. But you know, I'm kind of taking the other side here, because, in my opinion, there is no bad content. I think some content works better than others for certain people, and for me, sometimes the only way to find that out is when they actually start implementing what you're asking them to do. And the other thing is, even though I understand your point about, you know, we try and be upfront and I guess kind of front load what our process is going to be and what our expectations are and all those other things. I know for myself, I like, if I find something new that I think is going to be appropriate for that person, to say, hey, we're going to switch it up a little bit this week. Said we've started using something, we found it successful. I think it will work for you as well. Let's go ahead and try it. I don't think we ever know what outcomes are going to be. We can kind of, get an idea based on our past experience. But I know for what I do anyway, that every community is a little bit different. What people access is a little bit different. So, we take our content and we maybe do it a little bit differently than others, and we try and make it fit for their particular circumstances.
Yeah.
So,
the fit is very important to be aware of the fit and check with your coaching client if it's a real fit. And as long as you communicate about it, there shouldn't be a problem. And it's nothing bad in trying something new or different. But as long as you are aware and make sure there is a fit with your client and communicate well, in my opinion.
That's interesting dynamic.
I'm just going to follow up with this one point about that. And the cool thing about what I do is I always tell people, this is plan A. Let's go ahead and do it. It probably works 95% of the time. Know that I have plan B through Z in my head, but you don't need to be bogged down with that. That's what I'm here for. And I think that gives people a comfort level. Okay, I'm going to follow this plan and we're going to work it this way. But they know that for some reason, if they're not getting the results and we talk about it, and it might be the way they implement something that they don't get the results, that's another thing we have to explore. But they know, okay, if for whatever reason this isn't going to work in my town, I know that, Dr. Randy has other options for us. So it gives them kind of a comfort level. If it isn't going to work, they don't feel like they're failures, I guess.
And I think that's important. It kind of combines the two types of bad content we've talked about. And I think you might have missed that at the very beginning, Dr. Randy. The first bad content is being too inflexible, that you're so rigid about what it is that you're doing that you're not open to making the adjustments as it's needed. But then there also has to be the other type of bad content, which is you're so flexible that you've lost actual connection with what it is that your central coaching core is. And so for you, it'd be like if you started to take on a bunch of small businesses to help them with relationship marketing, where your core is health professionals. And so if you went to the shoe store and if the shoe store came up and said, hey, can you help us with relationship marketing, which you probably could do because it's probably applicable to anyone, but that's not your niche. That's not who you work with. You work with health professionals, and so that shoe store may not be your best client, and you'd have to make that decision. Am I going to stick with, is health professionals so important to me, or is the relationship marketing so important to me? And make that decision about which of those are you going to be more inflexible on, or which one of those is going to be your central core to your coaching that you're not going to get flexible on. Otherwise, you're going to drift into that realm of trying to be all things to all people, and that leads to bad delivery when you're trying to be all things to all people. That's what I mean by having clarity about who it is and what it is that you do as coaching, is so you don't drift into that trying to be all things to all people. But I think you're right, Dr. Randy, that you're right. There is no such thing as bad content. There's either content delivered to the wrong people, or there's content delivered in the wrong way, or content that just doesn't work for that person in that situation. And so it does, or it's just, this is what I truly believe is bad content. Content that is busy work for them, so you feel like you're making them do something that, one, does not move them forward, and two, you're choosing to have them do that because it's easier on you as the coach. If you drift into that two pieces, to me, that's bad content.
It's integrity too.
So I have a thought.
Go ahead, Doctor.
I have a few criteria of bad content. Here's my list. Here's my list of things that would go under the heading of bad content. And I guess there really is no bad content. They're just bad content providers. No, I'm kidding. So bad content, I mismade a list while I was listening. Number one, if it doesn't reinforce a belief, it's bad content. If it doesn't refute a belief, it's bad content. If it doesn't start some type of engagement or some type of discussion with the person that you're coaching, it's bad content. If it's not in their financial interest or in some way in their growth interest, it's bad content. And if it doesn't make either the coach or the coachee look smarter, it's bad content. So those are my 5 criteria for bad content.
Last one is a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, I always try to make myself look better.
Yeah, I know. And then we're back in the integrity question.
Oh, thanks.
So these are the first 3. I didn't get to writing all 5 of them down. Reinforce beliefs, refutes beliefs, or create conversation. And I know these are all supposed to be bold letters, and I'm doing my note card incorrectly, and yada, yada, yada. But the idea is, I want to start with those 3 because I think those are the idea of what I mean by moving the person forward. It's either helping them understand what they believe and getting clear on that, or helping them understand that they have a false belief that they need to adjust, or it's getting them to think deeply about something. Those are good content pieces. And then I love the 4th one that Dr. Allen said, and I think it's really important. The fact that it is something they can afford. I'm not going to go and consult somebody who has a $500 marketing budget to tell them to go spend $5,000 on Facebook ads. That's bad content. So you do have to honor the limitations that person is within for now. The goal is to get them past those limitations into something new, but the financial limitation is actually a really important one, and it's going to end up, and it's going to hurt you in the long run, because if you end up making them spend money they don't have, where are they going to have to make up for that deficit? By firing you and repocketing the money they were going to pay you. So you've got to keep that finances in place. So I think that's a big piece. And then I love the 5th one is tough. The idea of makes the coach look better. I don't know if I agree 100% with you on that, Dr. Allen.
Or the client look better. It's got to make one of them look better.
Okay, that I'll take. That I'll take. And I actually think it should always make the client look better. And because the client is better than they were beforehand, it automatically is going to make the coaching experience look better, which is the goal.
It reflects on the coach anyway then. If the
Exactly.
client grows, it reflects, and I think it's very important, and to me it's one of my passions. If I see a client grow and move in unexpected ways forwards, it makes me very happy. Perhaps it's my old nurse's background, but you know, if somebody gets better, it makes me happy, as long as they pay me as well, because it's value change as well. But the main goal is getting started with them after the assessment, and getting to a certain level, and if they reach that or even more, it fills me as a coach with joy. So it makes the coachee look very good and reflects on the coach anyway.
Yeah, because ultimately, hopefully, you're in the role of coaching because you want to help people excel and succeed and do better than they're currently doing. As long as you're doing that, you're succeeding as a coach. The better you do at that, the more that you're going to get recommendations from your current clients to other people, which means you're filling your coaching schedule, which is what you want as well. So all of that works very well. But I do love these first three. I think these are really important. It's either making sure they're clear on a belief, they're getting rid of an old belief, or they're just reflecting deeply on something they haven't reflected on, which really is going to make a difference. So I think that's spot on. Thanks for that, Dr. Allen.
Put it in the Hangout library. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, I like when this happens with a coaching client, when you deliver content that they steal from you and like to take credit for it as if it was theirs. It always makes them feel better about themselves, and they feel better about you when they're able to do that, because they feel, wow, this was really valuable. I used it. Because I steal people's stuff all the time. I mean, pretty much, you know, like Bob Dylan said, everything's already been said before. So it's just you repeating what someone else said. So for me, I really find that of great value when a coaching client of yours takes something of yours and claims it as their own. I think that's really terrific.
I call it permanent borrowing. Just borrow it.
Or as Alex says, research.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds a bit nicer than stealing. You know, it's permanent borrowing or something else. But you know, it's not really stealing. It's just using it. Well, whatever. Research.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm driving around in my car, I don't have the radio on ever. I just have an iPod connected with 120 like motivational speeches and talks and things like that on it, and it's really fun to listen to. Like, I can hear something from a T. Harv Eker or a Tony Robbins, and then next up might load up somebody from like a Napoleon Hill talk, and all of a sudden I'm realizing that all that Tony said was what Napoleon Hill said, 100 years ago, kind of thing. Like, and so it's clear, like everyone borrows from everyone. You figure out a way to make it that fits, a way to deliver it that's going to work for the people that you're working with. But it really, and everyone gets that. It's how can I understand this in a way that, how can I take all of this information I'm getting from my Blair Singers and from everybody else that I'm talking to and learning from and all these other folks, how do I take all of that and put it into some way that's a system that's going to help for the niche that I work with, for the success that I tell people they're going to get? Because the stuff that I've learned probably very much could help health professionals with relationship marketing. I'm sure a lot of the stuff from Tony Robbins is great for relationship marketing, but you need to find a way to explain it to a health professional in a way that they're going to understand it, because a health professional is going to think differently than that person who wants to be a professional speaker, than that person who wants to be a small business owner who grows from 5 employees to 50 employees, whatever it might be. Whatever your niche is, whoever it is that you help, you've got to figure out how to use all this knowledge you've gained and explain it in language they're going to understand.
Yeah, and what's also very important to me is it's don't grab everything and don't put everything on everybody else. So make a decision what you are going to deliver, because all the knowledge you can't pass all over to your coaching clients. You have to make a decision what you give to them, and not be rigid about it, but you can sort of overfeed them as well with knowledge and content. And you have to be aware of that too.
Yeah, and that comes back to that concept of being flexible and knowing
Yeah.
how much they really can handle and take in. And
Yeah.
and I want to just say this because a lot of folks who watch this are new to coaching, are newbies in the realm of coaching. You need to understand this, and it's an important piece. Sometimes you're gonna screw up, and that's okay. And a lot of this experience that we have of knowing how to be flexible, when to make adjustments, things came from coaching 100 clients at like up to now, and realizing what did and didn't work for them based on my style of coaching and making that adjustment. So you do want to have a plan. You start implementing it. You try it out with some folks. You realize this part works, this part doesn't. You make an adjustment here, move part here. Just like Dr. Randy was saying about how she has like plans A and B in place, and they're going, and that's what she's teaching folks. But she knows C, D, E, F, and G are available, and she might find out after working with 50 people that B doesn't work really well. C is okay, but G is awesome, and so now G becomes the old B, where it's it's what everybody from here on out is going to get. That comes with experience. That comes with doing as much coaching as you possibly can. So it's okay if none of this is figured out right now as a first-time coach. And as coachees, because we talk about this a lot on the Coaching Hangout, that this isn't just about how to make coaches better. As somebody who's getting coached, you need to do your research. You need to make sure you're clear on what it is you're getting. You need to know what's going to work well and what doesn't work well for you. And most importantly, you have to be willing to change. As somebody who's getting coaching, if you keep doing what you've done, you're going to keep getting what you've got. You hired a coach because something isn't working. And you have to be willing to let your coach be able to help you identify what isn't working and give you positive changes you can make to get something else to work better. If you're paying money for a coach, your job is to be ready to change and be different. Coaching is not retelling you what you want to hear so that you feel better about yourself, even though you're still failing. Coaching is helping you identify what is working and doing that more often, and what isn't working, scrapping that and finding something that does work to get you to where you want to be. You've got to be open for that. What do you think, Dr. Rennie?
Well, yeah, and to kind of bring what you just said full circle back to content, I think one of the interesting things to put out there to those viewers that are the coaching clients is you may not always instantly either necessarily understand or totally resonate with the content your coach is providing you. So you have to have a little bit of that trust and blind faith, and and trust that they do have the knowledge and the experience to know how to help you, and to be a part of the solution and not always looking for something wrong with what's being delivered to you.
Yeah, spot on. You're right. And this is all a hard balance. This is all a hard game to play. It comes with time. It comes with experience. It comes with knowledge. But this is part of it. Part of the reason why I like doing these hangouts every week is I'm just as happy if I can convince somebody to not try to be a coach. If coaching really isn't what they should be doing, but somewhere along the line someone said, "Oh my God, you're a really great listener. You should be a coach." No.
Yeah, and then they become a coach. It's really scary. It's really scary. Recently, in my surrounding, a lot of people turned up suddenly as a coach because somebody said to them, "Well, you're quite clever in some kind of thing," and they even want to publish about it. But as soon as you talk on a deeper level, on a coaching level, let's say like we do here on these hangouts, it becomes quite scary. What they suspect from their coachees, the lack of knowledge, or the just thinking, well, it's too easy to do. It's an easy way to get money, and in that way, getting it back to content. If you don't really know what you're talking about, it can be bad content because it's harming your coaching client.
Yeah, you shouldn't ever try to make up stuff.
That's the definition for bad content.
That's real bad content.
That is. Because people are smart and you're going to get called out on it every time. Somehow they're going to know that you're full of it and you're making it up. And it doesn't mean that you have to know everything. But it does mean you have to be aware that you don't know everything. I can't tell you how many times in coaching calls I'll be on a call, someone's going to ask a question, my answer is going to be, I have no idea. Let's table that till our next coaching call and I'll get you an answer.
That's fine.
That
But
works.
don't pretend.
Yeah.
Don't
Well, I
pretend.
think this is what you do, and then they spend all week trying to do it, and it doesn't work, and now you have killed any credibility you had as knowing knowledge. Instead, I don't know. That's a really, like, people always ask me, I do social media consultations all the time, and people are like, so how do I dominate in Twitter? My answer is, I don't know. I don't use Twitter.
Yeah, but I
people
think
do.
that comes with experience and confidence. Because until you're confident in what you do, it's very hard to say I don't know. When we're first in practice, I just remember being like totally embarrassed and mortified if someone, God forbid, asked me a question I didn't know. Whereas at the later part of my practice and my career, I actually embraced someone asking me something I didn't know. I just go, that's a really good question. You know what? I'm going to make a phone call or I'm going to do some research and I'm going to find out. When you come back in, I'm going to tell you we're both going to learn something.
Yep.
And yeah, I was
and
confident in that.
Yeah, and in that circumstance, those people already recognize you know so much that it's okay not to know something. It's if they think, well, this person knows nothing, and now they ask you a question and you know nothing, they lose confidence. But when you get to the point, when you get to the point where you could say, I don't know, they already have an impression of you or should. Well, they know so much, that's amazing. They don't know that, but they'll get that answer. It adds to your credibility. So I think that's good. A couple of things, points I wanted to make, because I know we're starting to get closer here. But number one is, I always think our content, and I've used this before, our content should transform, not just inform, number one. Our job is to help people get from point A to point B and recognize that from point A to point B is not just a straight line, that they need to understand that. Number three, I think with content, our job is to use stories to convey our message, because people love stories, and I'll tell you an interesting statistic in a minute. The other thing is, it's good for some of your content to be nothing more than questions, so you could get to the root of something they're dealing with. In other words, not always talking, but also listening. Dr. Randy will say, of course, that's why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah, I would say that too.
You got to learn how to do that. That's exactly right, Sean. That's perfect. And an interesting story is that there used to be a show on television, or maybe there still is, but the show was called ER. And that show, I don't know if you ever heard of it, Nick. Have you ever heard of that show?
Yeah, it has been very popular over here as well. And in German to Matt in Frankfurt, I'm sure it was translated in German.
Okay. Well, ER always told a number of stories, but it was really about not so much what was going on in the ER, but the stories of the people. And interestingly enough, a statistic was shown that showed after every ER show, 50% of the people that watched the show began talking about health issues, number one. 14% would call their doctor asking about health issues. And 33% of viewers would actually make decisions about changes they're going to make in their health just from watching ER. And it was all a television show. And it had a greater effect on what people did and how they acted and how they thought than probably going to see their doctor. So stories are very powerful ways to get messages out to people because they love stories and they love to digest them.
And gave George Clooney a real career boost.
To say the least.
And stories can be a powerful aspect of content. Good content can be good stories to get people connected. But you also have to be aware of, And so for me, the way to be able to judge if your content is going well or not, if it's good or bad, is getting constant feedback from the people you're coaching. Hey, we had you work on this last week. How did it work out for you? What came up for you? What's your reaction? And knowing if something should have an immediate result or if it's a long-term result. Because someone might be like, well, you told me to go and post on Facebook, and I posted on Facebook once, and I don't have anybody new that are members. Well, of course not. One post on Facebook does not equal a Facebook campaign, but so it's getting them knowing the difference between it, but also just getting constant feedback. If for no other reason, it lets you know where your people are at so you can better address and be flexible and assist them.
Yeah, it's talking to or talking with your clients.
Exactly, because you're never talking at your clients. You should always be talking with your clients, because coaching is always a conversation. Just because you're seen as the person in the seat of authority when you're the coach, it does not mean that you actually, are in authority. You are just there as a guide to assist these folks.
Yeah, and you're the vehicle.
Yeah, this is about them, not you. This is the other thing that a lot of times coaches their egos get in the way. Ego coaching is bad content when it's about making you feel good. Just because you want to feel good about your coaching does not mean you need to. That goes back to that assigning stuff that doesn't move the person forward, but it just is something that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy because you made them do something. That's bad content. You got to keep your ego out of it, and that's also going to help you with the I don't know, let me find out for you kind of deals. The more ego you have, the less likely you're going to say I don't know, and that's going to cause major problems. So all of these pieces come back around to that fact that you've got to be in integrity, you've got to be humble, and you've got to put your clients' end goals first. I was going to say your clients' needs first, but that's not always
end goal. End goal is much better.
Yeah.
And just put a break on in all you know and what you think they can use, because they become overwhelmed and they can't digest all the things you want to share. So a real good portion of content is also very important.
Yeah, and I know I talked about that idea of planning, being overly rigid to your planning. I'm not saying don't plan and don't have an idea what you're doing. I'm saying there's some adjustment. Dr. Randy, I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to kind of add on to into what Dr. Allen said about a story. Something that I always like to do before I introduce the content of something we're working on or the concept is I do like to use, whether it's either a full-out story or some type of, philosophical tagline, because for me, it kind of sets the tone for the conversation. It's almost like if you ever watch this, we're talking about TV shows, Criminal Minds, they always kind of start and end with some, philosophical basis and phrase or story that, ties it all together. And I find for me that works really well if I say, well, today we're going to talk about why, as you're trying to be a leader in your community, all great leaders were first great followers. I talk about Napoleon Hill, how he talks about that. And it kind of lays the foundation for us, making them understand that you first have to understand to be a follower, and then you can be a leader, and that works, well, it mirrors your practice as well. So that's just an example of where I agree with Dr. Allen, although I will say his stories are usually considerably longer than mine, but that's just because he likes to talk a little bit more than I do. But I love him anyway, even though he likes to talk a lot. And he actually has 2 mouths and 2 ears, so he can listen and talk at the same time.
I'm gonna not touch that one at all, and we're gonna just slide right over that. We are hitting towards the top of the hour, which is right about 45 is where we usually do a good job of kind of stopping, wrapping things up. So I know we were talking good content, bad content, and I think what we ended up determining was the content itself is even less important than the delivery, how well it affects the person you're working with, how well you know what they need. So you might have a plan, but it's how well is it adjusted to match what people want and need. So I think this is great. I'm going to throw it out to the folks to see if there's anybody who has any ideas for topics for next week. Is there anything that people want to talk about next week? And while you guys are thinking about that, I just want to recognize Matt, who's been kind of interacting from the outside. And when we were talking about the fact that everybody steals from everybody, he said he put it really clearly. The truth is the truth, so it's natural. It's natural that it's always the same stuff. Everyone is teaching the same stuff because it's what works. That's why it's the same. It may be phrased slightly different, but it's the stuff that works. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to, show that the wheel works.
And that's why there's no crime in repeating it.
Exactly, because it's a truth. You're just sharing a truth. You may have learned it from X person or Y person or Z person, but it's still just a general truth out there.
It depends a bit. We do have a copycat here in the Netherlands who copies everything from T.R. Waker and brought it into the world, got millions from it in seminars until T.R. Waker himself showed up in the Netherlands. And there was a real battle about it because it was word by word, joke for joke. Everything was copied and delivered as being from the other person. And now he's mentioning where he got the real content from. So that if you use a large part and you really rely on that, it's a good thing to say you honor your masters. Not all the time. Depends a bit.
Like a concept taken from one person is plagiarism. A concept taken from many people is research. It's that idea that he's not delivering content. He's delivering Harv's specific content. Program. I can still talk about the same things. Like I can talk about Harv has this thing about the jars and his money management system. I can talk about money management systems. I can talk about putting money away so that you get to use it for fun, and some is for savings and some is for that stuff. And I can say, and I learned this from T.R. Becker, and this is how it works, and this is how I've implemented it in my life. That's different than using Harv's exact script.
Yeah, for 3 full days. That's something different.
So.
Yeah. But well, he's mentioning where he got it from, and that's okay. But that's something different. It's also what we earlier discussed about integrity. What do you do?
Yeah, and to be honest, for the most part, you're not going to run into problems with unless you really you were in somebody's coaching program, they gave you a binder of the scripts you're supposed to use, and you literally just cross out that person's name and put your name in. Yeah. You're going to be fine. But this is so to me there's a difference between good content, bad content, and illegal content, and that's illegal content. I don't even want to it's clear that's not what you do. I want to stick with people who are really committed to being true coaches and trying to do the right thing. So does anybody have a subject or a topic that somebody wants to cover for next week? It's okay. If not, we'll do an open conversation like we often do. Okay,
let's try an open one.
Open conversation it is for next week. That's great. We're going to just go for final thoughts and insights. I'm going to go left to right today. So Dr. Randy, you're going to be up first. Any last thoughts or insights from you for today, from today's Hangout?
I think for me, even though I use a foundation of my content, that because things change so quickly these days, that I find that I'm always evolving, much more so than just a few years ago, where you could use the same thing for a longer period of time and have it be effective. I find that for what I do, that I'm editing my content a lot more and updating it, and the feedback I get is that people appreciate it, especially the people that we work with over the years, that they appreciate that we're not using stale information. But the content is very important, and it should be something that a coach really spends quite a bit of time on, because those are the tools that you're giving people, so you need to respect that and not take shortcuts.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, and it comes with time, it comes with experience, but I also think it's coming with changes in society. So I think that's an important thing to note, is that flexibility has to happen just as society is shifting. So you're spot on there, Dr. Randy. Dr. Allen, any last thoughts, ideas, concepts from today's hangout that you want to share?
Yeah, I was going to say that content requires both a pitcher and a catcher, and they must be able to reverse roles to make a relationship work.
So if I can, let me see if I hear what you're saying accurately. As a coach, you have to be open to learning from the people that you're coaching. Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Allen. Great. Nika, any last thoughts from today's hangout?
Well, it's very obvious to me. You have to be aligned in what you're coaching. Have your framework and be flexible in between to serve your coachee.
Yep. Flexibility is key. It goes along with what Dr. Randy was saying, and we've talked a lot. You've got to be open to adjusting this stuff. You have to know what you want to, where you want to take that person to, but you also have to understand. And I'm gonna put the image back up, just because I think it's unbelievably appropriate. I have to go hunt the image down thanks to Dr. Allen's comment. But this is gonna be my final kind of word for the day. This is what coaching looks like. People think you could change success to coaching. People think coaching is taking somebody from point A to point B. What coaching really is, from point A, whole lots of adjustments and tweaking and they still get to point B. That is what coaching is. That is how you have to do it for coaching. That is what success looks like. So that is my final word. Thank you, everybody who's been here and hanging out, for the comments, the feedback. Just checking to make sure there's no last words from any of the folks watching. And Shun, Matt, and I will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. See, that's just me using somebody else's thing back from when I was a kid. But we will be back, and we're going to have an open conversation. So come with your ideas, your thoughts, your topics, whatever you want to talk about. Those always promise to be enlightening because we usually go on some really fascinating tangents. So I will see you all next week on the next Coaching Hangout. Cheers.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Sean. Bye.